Welcome to Indie Hackers Worldwide. We have with us Emmanuel, the co-founder, co-CEO of Bubble.io. Emmanuel, tell us your story.
Well, first of all, it's great to be here. The Indie Hacker community has always been have very strong overlap with our own community, so it's really great to be here. So I talk a little bit about myself very quickly, and then I'll get into what Bubble is about. So I guess, as a lot of people can hear, I'm originally from France. I grew up in France, went to college in France, and then I actually moved quite a bit. And in some ways, I got into the entrepreneurship journey fairly late compared to a lot of success stories you hear from Silicon Valley, in the sense that I started Bubble at 29 after having been a management consultant in China for a few years, having gone to business school with an MBA, which is not necessarily the most traditional way to start a business now. There is kind of an anti-MBA thing going on in tech, and actually learn how to code on the job. So I was not really thinking I would be like a software entrepreneur for a very long time until I actually started Bubble and met Josh. And so the idea that governed us when we started the company in the first place 7 years ago, it's been a while, was to empower people to create companies without the need for engineers. And that was something that I think is true everywhere, but that was in particular true in New York, where New York has a lot of very driven people from a lot of industries that see a lot of inefficiencies in the industries they've been working on, but don't have the technical skills and don't have engineering friends, because you just don't have many engineers in New York compared to like San Francisco, for instance. And so what happened, it was not my idea originally, it was Josh's idea, so my co-founder, where he was basically in New York and he was technical, and everybody was asking him, hey, can you help me build this? Can you help me build that? And he found himself too many times saying, I can't. Sometimes it could be bad idea, sometimes it could be a good idea, but still almost not the point. The point is, there is so much creative energy that people are willing to put to something, and they just don't have the ways to do it. And so that basically what was the inception of Bubble is, can we create something that lets people, like business people, that have a vision for a product but not the technical skills, don't write code, can we let them, just build it themselves without having the need for an engineer? And so that started in very early 2012. Josh started working on this for a couple of months and then realized it was kind of too big of a project for one person. Because one way to describe it is to say, enable people to start companies without engineers. Another way is to be, kind of the Holy Grail of technology, if you will, which is, can we empower people to do something that used to be difficult very easy? If you think about it, it's exactly what was, Windows versus MS-DOS. Like MS-DOS was, how to use a computer with a command line, which was complicated, and then Macintosh and Windows came along with icons and a graphic user interface, and that was much easier. And that happened in the 80s. And a lot of people have tried to do that for code, but no one has actually succeeded, to a point that, we don't teach the coding in schools, except if you want to be like a specialist on the computer science side of things. And that is something that was pretty hard, definitely not for a single person. And so Josh decided to look for a co-founder. And so some friends put us in touch. I was graduating from business school at the time. I was at Harvard. Josh had gone to Harvard College a few years prior. And so we had some mutual friends, kind of the Harvard network. And so he put the word out there, he wanted a co-founder, and we met after I graduated from school. And we actually decided to partner on our first coffee. That was like a very short-term thing that we did, because I had a job offer that was expiring the following day of our coffee. And so we were like, okay, well, it's now or never, so let's just try. And so we started with that vision, and it's been the same basically since then, in a sense. Can we just create something that is accessible for someone who's, familiar with using Microsoft Office, whether it's PowerPoint or Excel, and enable them to create exactly what they envision. It took us quite some time to get there, because the amount of features you need to have to go to people and tell them, seriously, without actually, lying, I guess, that without making false promises that they can do exactly what they want to do, takes a very long time. And we saw an inflection point in, when people reach out, when they discover Bubble, the first thing they're going to ask, and I'm actually expecting some of the questions here to be, hey, can I do this? Can I do that? Because that's kind of the first thing you hear. And in the early years, you're going to say no most of the time. And at some point we saw an inflection point, not an inflection point, but the curve started going in the other direction where we started saying yes more and more. And that was around late 2017, early 2018. And so for the first 5 years, we mostly worked on, iterating on the product with, literally 20 to 30 active users. We found a few larger startups that were using us, that were paying us enough money so that we could be, what people would call like ramen profitable. So, making enough money where you definitely don't get rich. You don't have a super comfortable lifestyle, but you don't lose money on working on this. And after 2017, then things started getting easier. We started having, like, in that case, an inflection point in terms of revenue, started hiring a team, got to a team of about 10, 11 people, fully bootstrapped, fully profitable, before raising around earlier this year. And so where you can build on us, because that's always a question, like the no-code space right now is pretty hot. Like, people talk a lot about no-code, but actually each of the players in the no-code kind of solve a different purpose and a different market. So what Bubble is for is building web applications with a backend, with connecting with APIs, and with very, very custom logic. Meaning, you can start doing something like, if the user is logged in and his credit cards is from that country, do this, otherwise do something else. And you can do that just by clicking. Like we've built an abstraction on top of, code that is without code, but still extremely flexible. On the flip side, that means we have more of a learning curve than other tools. Other tools tend to be a little bit faster to grasp, but you're going to be much more limited in terms of what you can build. Tools like Webflow will be fantastic if you want to build like a beautiful CMS or e-commerce shop. But if you're trying to build something like Airbnb or Twitter, you will not be able to do it because they don't have the backend capabilities. That's where Bubble comes in. So for people that want to start companies, Bubble is actually, of all the tools on the market, one of the, honestly, I think the best one, in a sense that most people that want to start a web startup don't necessarily want to start an e-commerce shop, in which case they could use Shopify or Webflow, but they really want to build like a platform, where the website you're building, the product is the core of your business. So think about it, Airbnb is the core of their business, is this platform they've built where they have sellers and buyers on both sides of the network, of the marketplace. And so that's where Bubble comes in, and that where Bubble is probably the only tool currently on the market that lets you do this without code. The way it works is you build it on Bubble. It's actually free to build. The way we charge is on hosting. So once you're on Bubble, you don't need to worry about web service like AWS, Amazon Web Services, or Azure or Google Cloud, because we host everything for you. In our world, if you're a business person trying to think, or an entrepreneur trying to build a product, again, where people can rent apartments on a short-term basis, for instance, so something like Airbnb, there's no server in what I just described. What you have is just, an idea, a platform, two kind of people on the marketplace. But whether you're hosting that, on this server or this type of database or another one, is really not your problem as a product person. And so we're trying to take care of that for you automatically. And so people build on us and they launch on us, and then after that they scale on us. It got to a point, and it took a lot of pain. I'm not going to lie, scaling pain were difficult, but some of our earlier users that kept scaling on us got to a pretty impressive scale. Our largest user has had, it's a fairly complicated marketplace, not marketplace, but platform where homeowners apply to get loans to install a solar panel on the roof. Installers have a CRM where they can see all the projects they're working on. They can get paid through the platform. So it's a pretty complicated web product that they've built entirely on Bubble, and they've processed over $1 billion of loans and raised $300 million themselves. So it's really, it scales much more than you think. I think if you think about the journey of no code, the first thing was to prove, things could be built without code, regardless of the scale. Because for a long time, people were like, oh, visual programming doesn't give you enough flexibility. And that first thing was to show it is actually possible. Now, the next thing is to show that it can actually scale and work great at scale. We've pretty much done with the first one. I mean, there are always some things we can improve on the product to make it more usable and easier to learn. But in terms of features, we pretty much feature complete in a sense that for the web, not for native apps. That's a different platform and different product. So that we're doing pretty well. Now we need to show that we can scale nicely. The good thing about our model is that since people tend to start companies on top of us, we scale with them basically. And so we have the same scaling plan at the same time, and that has worked pretty well so far. the beauty of the model is that whenever one startup gets ahead of another one, well, they will force us to improve the platform for everyone, because we don't do custom work. Like, we just make sure the platform scales nicely for everyone when we solve the problem for one person. So today we're based in New York. We have 19 people. Sometimes I'm losing track because we are adding people like almost on a weekly basis right now. We have 19 people. For a very long time, it was just me and Josh, like thinking about the indie hacker community. Like, we were doing that profitable, just the two of us for 5 years. I built a lot of the customer facing product and did all of customer success myself. But so we were very much understaffed, and now we're trying to staff up to be more, to have the team that is more compatible with our goal, that is to scale. And when I mean to scale, I don't talk about scaling Bubble. I mean, obviously scaling Bubble, but making sure our users can scale, which is almost more important. So the last thing I'll add is why we're doing this, because it kind of started a little bit with a opinionated view that the world was doing something wrong. And what I mean by that is the problem that we were seeing is that technology is so expensive today to create, because it's very hard to find engineers, that it prevents, again, a lot of people to start companies. But if you actually don't put that in the terms of, you know, are people starting companies or not? If you put that in the terms as, you know, can people use technology to solve local problems at the local level in their local communities? What we see is that today, it's basically impossible, because engineers are very hard to find. They're very expensive. Creating software is really expensive. And so if you don't work on a piece of software that has the potential to reach like a massive valuation, like, I don't know, at least $100 million or something, it's going to be extremely hard to find investors. And if you don't have investors, then you won't make the product happen. And so the reason why we decided to do this is to fix this by having a much cheaper way to create technology, because one way to see what we do is that we make technology much easier for non-technical people to build. But the consequence is that you can do it for basically 1/50 or 1/100 of the cost, which enables us to have a lot of people in places that you wouldn't expect a lot of startups to happen. Like, a lot of our users are actually, you know, in the Midwest, in some emerging markets where the engineering talent pool is fairly little. And then we're kind of the leftovers, you know, of the technology world for quite some time, because most of the people capable of creating these things all aggregate, you know, in like major economic centers where salaries are higher. So that's, you know, the East Coast, and most importantly, Silicon Valley and San Francisco, which I think leads to a lot of challenges. And so that's why we do this.